The rain had turned the city into a maze of reflections when Nora Hale pushed through the glass door of the quiet rooftop bar. She smelled faintly of espresso and kitchen smoke, the last traces of her double shift at the diner. Her palms were still trembling. She had received an unexpected message an hour earlier: "Meet me at the Meridian." It concerns your mother. She expected a doctor. Or a debt collector. She did not expect Cassian Ward, the notoriously private billionaire whose name made entire boardrooms fall silent. He sat alone in a booth by the window, dressed in a dark suit that contrasted sharply with the storm behind him. The lightning flickered, carving sharp angles along his jaw. When Nora approached, he did not smile. He did not even look up at first. He simply tapped the table once, signaling her to sit. "Nora Hale," he said, voice low, steady. "Your mother's hospital notified you about the overdue balance today." Her throat tightened. "How do you know that?" "I make it my business to know things," he replied. Then he pushed a folder toward her. Inside was the full bill for her mother's treatment, stamped in red. Past due. Treatment interruption scheduled for the end of the week. Nora's heart dropped. Why am I here? Cassian studied her the way someone studies a document, not a person. Because I need a solution, and you need one too. She stared at him, waiting. Then he placed another document on top of the medical papers. A contract. Thick, precise, legally airtight. "I need a wife," Cassian said. No hesitation. No softness. Only necessity. 3 months. Public appearances only. You will live in my home, attend events as my spouse, and follow the terms outlined here. Nora blinked, stunned. Why me? You do not even know me. I do not need someone I know, he said. I need someone the board cannot manipulate. Someone outside my world. His eyes lifted to hers for the first time. And someone who does not fear me. Nora swallowed hard. She should have stood up. She should have walked away. But her mother's face flashed in her mind, pale in the hospital bed. The machines. The silence. The cost. Cassian leaned closer. In exchange, I will pay every cent of your mother's treatment. Immediately. There it was. The trap disguised as mercy. What are the rules? Nora asked quietly. He opened the contract with a single motion. Rule 1. This is not a romantic relationship. You will not attempt to make it one. Rule 2. You will not interfere with my company. Rule 3. You will remain until the end of the term. No exceptions. And after. She whispered. After, he said, we return to strangers. The storm cracked behind them. Nora looked at the contract, then at the man who seemed carved from stone and expectations. She felt the weight of the pen in her hand before she even realized she had picked it up. Her signature trembled onto the page. Cassian watched her. Unreadable. Good, he said softly. The car is waiting outside. From this moment on, your life changes. Nora did not know which part frightened her more, the contract she had just signed, or the way Cassian Ward had looked at her when she did. The black sedan waited at the curb, its engine humming softly as the rain eased into a mist. Nora stepped inside, still gripping the contract folder as if it might dissolve if she loosened her hands. The interior smelled of leather and clean cedar. Everything felt too polished, too distant, too far from the world she belonged to. The driver did not speak. He simply nodded once and guided the car into the night. City lights smeared across the windows like gold and silver brushstrokes. Nora pressed her forehead gently against the cool glass. 3 months. 3 months, as the wife of Cassian Ward. Her heart thudded in her chest. When the car turned into the private, the Ward residence, Nora felt her breath stop. The estate was not a house. It was a world. Slate stone, warm light spilling through tall windows, a calm that did not belong to ordinary people. She stepped out slowly, her shoes touching stone that seemed almost too clean to walk on. Cassian waited beneath the archway of the entrance, hands in his pockets, posture controlled. The storm had softened him a little. Drops of rain clung to his hair like faint sparks. He studied her expression, then motioned toward the door. This way, he said. Inside, The air was warm. A sweeping staircase curved toward the second floor. Modern art lined the walls. Everything was arranged with precision, but none of it felt lived in. Nora could not imagine laughter here. She could not imagine someone getting comfortable on the couch or spilling coffee on the counter. Cassian walked toward a long hallway. She followed, her steps echoing lightly. "There are rules," he said, his voice steady. "I will clarify them again, so there's no confusion." Nora nodded. "You will attend every public event on the calendar. You will respond when spoken to. You will present yourself with composure. You will not attempt to enter my office or private working spaces. And you will not discuss this arrangement with anyone." Nora inhaled slowly. "I understand." He paused, turning to face her fully for the first time since they left the bar. The hall light caught the sharp lines of his cheekbones. "This agreement protects both of us," he said quietly. "The board cannot challenge a stable marriage. And your mother will receive the care she needs." The reminder cut through her like a blade. "I know why I'm here," she whispered. For a moment, Cassian looked as if he wanted to respond, but something held him back. He gestured toward a door near the end of the hallway. "This is your room." Nora stepped inside. The space was elegant, but soft, with warm tones and a window overlooking the city skyline. A fresh set of clothes hung neatly in the wardrobe. A small note rested on the dresser. "Tomorrow at 8, press training." Nora felt heat rise in her cheeks. She was a waitress. She had spent years balancing trays and wiping counters. She did not belong in a world of press training. She set the folder down and sat on the edge of the bed. Her hands trembled again. She pressed them together, trying to steady her breath. A soft knock came at the door. She turned. Cassian stood there, not entering, simply watching her with a curious, unreadable expression. "I will have staff deliver everything you need," he said. "If there's anything specific, inform the house manager." "Thank you," she said quietly. He nodded, hesitated for half a second, then closed the door. Silence settled around her. She stared at the wardrobe, at the note, at the new life she had stepped into without truly understanding the cost. Outside, the rain returned, tapping lightly against the glass like a distant reminder of the world she had come from. Nora lay back on the bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling. 3 months. 3 months of pretending. 3 months of living beside a man who did not believe in love. And 3 months to find out whether she could survive the cost of saving the only person she had left. Far down the hall, Cassian stood alone, listening to the rain. He had hired her for necessity, logic, strategy. That was all. So, why did the sound of her footsteps still linger in his thoughts? Morning arrived quietly, slipping through the tall windows of Nora's new room with a pale golden light. She opened her eyes slowly, momentarily unsure of where she was. The sheets were too soft, the silence too heavy, the view too high above the world she used to know. Then it returned to her all at once. The contract, the mansion, Cassian Ward waiting beneath the storm. Her chest tightened, but she sat up and placed her feet on the polished wood floor. A knock sounded gently at her door. "Nora Hale." A calm female voice asked. "Yes," Nora replied, smoothing her hair quickly. The door opened to reveal a well-dressed woman in her 40s. Her posture immaculate and her expression kind, but professional. "My name is Marin. I am the house manager. Mr. Ward asked me to prepare everything for your schedule today. Breakfast is ready in the East Kitchen, and your press training begins in 1 hour." Nora nodded, grateful for the woman's composed tone. "Thank you, Marin." As she followed Marin through the long hallway, Nora tried to keep her shoulders steady. The mansion felt larger in the daylight open, pristine, filled with expensive quiet. When they reached the kitchen, the chef offered her a polite greeting, and a plate of fruit and warm pastries was set before her. She ate slowly, fighting the knot in her stomach. She had never been trained for anything more complicated than a double shift at the diner. What did press training even look like? How did one behave like the wife of a billionaire without losing themselves? At 8 o'clock sharp, Marin guided her into a sunlit room equipped with cameras, lights, and a narrow table lined with cue cards. A woman in a deep navy dress stepped forward with a clipboard. "You must be Nora. I am Alina. I will help you prepare for the upcoming events. Our job is simple. We teach you how to stand beside Mr. Ward without the press tearing you apart." "Oh." Nora flushed. "I understand." Alina's voice softened, but only slightly. "Everything you do will be photographed. Every gesture, every glance, every moment of silence. The world will expect poise, and they will expect perfection from a woman married to Cassian Ward." Nora's pulse quickened. "I will try my best." "We will begin with posture and neutral expressions," Alina said, tapping the clipboard. "Then hand placement. After that, eye contact and controlled breathing." Nora nodded. Even though she felt the edges of panic whispering through her ribs, the session moved quickly, Alina correcting the angle of her chin, her shoulders, the way she crossed her feet. For every adjustment Nora made, 3 more seemed to appear. Her back began to ache. Her arms shook. She could feel the old version of herself slipping further away with each practiced pose. Halfway through the training, the door clicked softly. Cassian entered the room. Everyone straightened immediately. Nora's breath caught. He looked as composed as ever, but something flickered in his eyes when he saw her. She was standing in the center of the room, chin lifted, hands clasped. Trying desperately to appear as if she belonged, Alina bowed her head slightly. "Mr. Ward, we are making progress." Cassian walked closer, his gaze never leaving Nora. "Good." Alina stepped aside. "Would you like to observe?" "No," Cassian said quietly. "I am here for something else." He looked at Nora, voice steady but gentler than before. "I will need you to accompany me to a luncheon tomorrow. It is a small gathering with members of the board. They must see stability." Nora swallowed. "I understand," he hesitated, then added, "You will do well." The words struck her harder than she expected. She had prepared herself for cold instructions, but not this faint. Careful encouragement that sounded like he was not used to giving it, but meant it. Cassian turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "Marin will deliver your attire. If you need anything adjusted, ask her." The door closed behind him, and Alina exhaled softly. Well, that is rare. He does not usually attend these sessions. Nora stood still, heart thudding. She could still feel the echo of his presence in the room, the unexpected warmth of his words, rare. Maybe she did not know him at all. Maybe this contract was not as simple as ink and signatures. Maybe something had already begun to shift. "Shall we continue?" Alina asked. Nora drew a steady breath. "Yes, let us continue." Nora barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the training room, the cameras, Alina's steady corrections, and the moment Cassian had walked in. It replayed in her mind like a scene she could not escape. "You will do well," simple sentence. Yet it lingered in her chest long after the lights went out. By morning, the mansion felt different. The staff moved with purposeful energy. The halls hummed with the subtle tension of preparation. Marin knocked on Nora's door right at 7, her expression composed as always. "Your attire is ready," Marin said, leading her to a room filled with soft light and mirrored walls. A tailored cream dress hung on a metal rack, simple yet elegant. Paired with low heels and a structured clutch, Nora stared at it, overwhelmed. "This is for the luncheon?" "Yes." Mr. Ward approved it himself. A strange warmth touched Nora's face. She quickly dismissed it, reminding herself that this was business. Appearance, image, nothing more. After she dressed, the reflection staring back at her looked nothing like the diner waitress she remembered. Her hair was styled neatly, her posture polished from yesterday's training. She looked believable. She looked like someone who might stand beside a man like Cassian Ward. Marin studied her and nodded with subtle approval. "Mr. Ward is waiting downstairs." Nora felt her pulse quicken as she followed Marin through the sweeping corridors. When she reached the grand entrance, Cassian stood near the doorway, adjusting the cuff of his shirt. He looked up the moment she appeared. For a brief second, something unreadable flickered across his eyes. Surprise, admiration? Whatever it was, it softened the sharpness of his expression. You look appropriate, he said quietly. It was not exactly a compliment, but Nora sensed it was the closest he knew how to offer. She dipped her head slightly. Thank you. The drive to the luncheon was quiet. Cassian sat beside her in the back seat, his posture straight, his gaze fixed on the passing skyline. Nora stole a few glances. There was something different about him today, still distant, still composed, but not unapproachable, as if the space between them was no longer entirely built of iron walls. When they arrived at the private club, Cassian offered his arm. It startled her. For one heartbeat, she hesitated. Then she placed her hand gently against his sleeve. The gesture felt strangely natural. Inside, the board members and their spouses turned as the couple entered. Nora felt every gaze sweep over her, weighing, judging, silently measuring whether she was worthy of standing beside Cassian Ward. Cassian leaned slightly toward her and whispered, "Remember your training. Breathe." His voice steadied her. A tall board member approached, his expression overly polite. "Mr. Ward and Mrs. Ward. A pleasure." Nora felt her breath hitch at the title, but she forced a composed smile. "Thank you for having us." The man raised an eyebrow, surprised by her poise. "Your wife carries herself well, Cassian." Cassian looked at her, a subtle hint of pride warming his gaze. "She does." The luncheon moved in slow waves of conversation, small talk, and carefully veiled questions. Nora mirrored Cassian's posture, maintained her composed smile, and let the training guide her. Several board members asked where she and Cassian had met. She delivered the rehearsed answers smoothly, and Cassian supported each detail with the confidence of a man who never broke character. But underneath the choreography, small moments broke through when she stumbled slightly on the carpet. Cassian steadied her hand without hesitation. When one board member spoke dismissively to a server, Nora's expression tightened and Cassian noticed. When she looked overwhelmed for a moment, Cassian angled his body closer, shielding her subtly from the crowd. These were not contractual behaviors. These were human ones. After the luncheon, Cassian escorted her outside, the sunlight touching the edge of his hair. He exhaled slowly, as if releasing a weight she could not see. "You handled yourself well," he said. Nora looked up at him, her voice soft. "I did what I could. It was more than that." His eyes held hers for a long, quiet moment. "You surprised them? And you?" she asked before she could stop herself. Cassian paused. The air shifted. "Yes," he said finally. "You surprised me too." For the first time since the contract was signed, Nora felt the ground beneath them begin to shift. Something new, fragile, and unspoken took root in the space between their breaths. The car ride back to the mansion was calmer than the one that morning. Nora sat with her hands folded in her lap, the faint echo of the luncheon still pulsing through her. The conversations, the scrutiny, the unexpected ease of Cassian standing beside her, it all swirled together in a way she had not anticipated. When they reached the estate, Cassian stepped out first and offered his hand to help her from the car. She hesitated only for a second before taking it. His grip was steady, grounding. For a moment, she imagined this was not an arrangement held together by ink and necessity. For a moment, it felt almost real. Inside, Marin greeted them politely and informed Cassian of several messages awaiting him. He nodded and excused himself to his office. Nora watched him disappear down the hallway, wondering how a man could seem so untouchable one moment and unexpectedly human the next. The afternoon sunlight poured into the living room, creating warm patterns on the marble floor. Nora took a slow breath and sat on the edge of the sofa. Her shoulders finally relaxed. She had survived her first public event. She had not embarrassed him. She had not collapsed under pressure. A small knock sounded at the archway. Marin stepped inside, leaving a respectful distance. "Would you like some tea? It may help you unwind." Nora smiled gently. "Yes, thank you. That would be lovely." As Marin prepared the tea, Nora noticed something she had missed earlier. On a side table near the couch sat a framed photograph. It was old, slightly faded, the edges worn. A much younger Cassian stood beside a woman who looked warm and bright, her arms wrapped around him. Their smiles were completely unguarded. Nora leaned in. This is his mother, right? Marin paused, her expression softening. Yes, Mr. Ward was very close to her. She passed away several years ago. Nora felt a quiet ache in her chest. She looked kind. She was, Marin said. After she died, this house changed. He changed. He built walls that no one has been able to climb since. Nora looked at the photograph again, then at the hallway where Cassian had disappeared. I see. When Marin left the room, Nora remained seated. Reflecting on the glimpses she had seen today, the way Cassian steadied her hand. The subtle protection he offered during the luncheon. The small hesitation before he spoke to her. There was something behind the severity of his voice, something buried too deep for the world to see. She stood and wandered toward the patio doors. Stepping out into the crisp afternoon air, the garden stretched out beautifully, a sanctuary of quiet greenery hidden from the chaos of the city below. She followed the stone path, letting her mind settle. A few minutes later, she heard footsteps behind her. Cassian approached, his suit jacket gone, his sleeves rolled up slightly. He looked less like a billionaire and more like a man trying to breathe after a long day. I thought I would find you here, he said. Nora turned to face him. I needed a moment. So did I. They stood side by side, the silence between them more companionable than awkward. Cassian looked toward the skyline with a distant expression. My mother loved this garden. She said it made the world feel quieter. Nora swallowed gently. I saw the photograph. His jaw tightened. He nodded once. She was the only person who understood me without having to explain anything. After she passed, I learned that silence is easier than vulnerability. Nora looked at him, her voice soft but steady. Silence is not easier. It is only safer. Cassian turned his head slightly, meeting her gaze. Something shifted in the air. Not dramatic, not loud, but real. You did well today, he said again. Better than anyone could have expected. And you were. Kind, Nora replied, choosing the word carefully. He blinked, surprised. Kind. Yes, you were watching out for me. Cassian looked away, almost as if the truth startled him. I suppose I was. Nora stepped closer. Not enough to break any boundary, but enough to show she was not afraid of him. You do not always have to carry everything alone. He studied her with silent intensity, the cool edges of his expression softening for the first time. Maybe, he said quietly, I am beginning to learn that. The wind brushed gently through the garden as they stood together. And for the briefest moment, Cassian Ward, billionaire, strategist, master of control, allowed the walls he had built to lower just an inch. The following morning arrived with a soft gray sky, a calm that made the mansion feel almost gentle. Nora dressed quietly, still carrying the memory of yesterday's garden conversation. She could not erase the image of Cassian standing beside her, sleeves rolled up, the walls around him loosening for the very first time. When she stepped into the dining room, Cassian was already there. He was reading through a stack of papers, the sunlight stretching across the table toward him. He looked different today, not softer, exactly, but less armored. He glanced up. Good morning, she replied, taking a seat across from him. For a few long seconds, neither of them spoke. The silence was not cold. It was contemplative, as if they were both adjusting to the new distance, or lack of distance between them. Marin entered and poured coffee for them both. Mr. Ward, the board confirmed your attendance for tonight's charity reception, she said. They expect Mrs. Ward to accompany you. Nora's pulse quickened slightly. Another event, another test, another crowd watching every detail. Cassian nodded, but his gaze drifted back to Nora. You will not be alone tonight, he said. I will stay with you the entire time. Her breath eased. Thank you. The day unfolded in small preparations, fittings, hair, makeup, more guidance from Alina about the evening's etiquette. Nora practiced her posture in the long mirror, reminding herself to breathe evenly and keep her hands relaxed. By the time the evening arrived, her nerves spun tightly inside her chest. Marin guided her to the main entry hall where Cassian waited, dressed in a slate-black suit that looked impossibly precise. When he saw her approaching in a midnight blue gown, he froze almost imperceptibly. Nora felt her cheeks warm. Is something wrong? No, he said quietly. You look remarkable. The word lingered in the air like a warmth neither of them expected. He offered his arm, and she accepted it with a steady breath. Together, they walked out to the waiting car. The charity reception was held in a sprawling glass venue overlooking the river. Soft lights shimmered through the wide windows, reflecting across the polished floors. As Cassian and Nora entered, the murmur of conversation shifted, eyes turning toward them. Nora held her breath, but Cassian leaned slightly closer. You are fine. We are fine, she nodded once, grounding herself in the reassurance she had not expected to need. Several attendees approached them with polite smiles and careful curiosity. Cassian spoke calmly, introducing Nora with a confidence that made her feel less like a prop and more like a partner, a well-dressed woman. Mrs. Ellington stepped toward Nora with a gracious smile. Mrs. Ward, your composure is refreshing. It is lovely to finally meet you. Nora held her gaze and smiled warmly. Thank you. Tonight is special for many reasons. Mrs. Ellington nodded approvingly before moving on. Cassian watched the interaction with a subtle lift of his brow. You handled that well? Nora exhaled softly. I am learning. It's impressively fast, he said. As the evening progressed, Cassian stayed close, just as he promised. Their movements fell into an effortless rhythm, him guiding her through the crowd with a hand gently placed at her back, her responding with steady confidence. Small glances passed between them, each one carrying a growing understanding. Neither had spoken aloud. But as Nora moved to greet a new group of guests, she noticed a familiar figure in the corner of the room, a man in a gray suit, watching her, his expression sharp, calculating, almost investigative. She leaned slightly toward Cassian. Who is that? Cassian's eyes followed her line of sight. His expression hardened. That is Adrian Locke. He is the chief financial officer. Nora's pulse shifted. He seems interested. He is, Cassian replied, his voice turning colder. And he always has an agenda. The CFO continued to watch them, his gaze drifting between Cassian's hand on Nora's back and the calm ease in her posture. Something in his stare felt like a warning. It's like the beginning of a storm no one else could see. Cassian leaned closer, lowering his voice. Stay near me. Do not engage with him unless necessary. Nora nodded, trying not to let her worry show. The music softened. Conversation swirled. But beneath the elegance of the evening, a new tension had entered the air quiet. Sharp and waiting. For the first time, Nora felt that their contract was not the only thing drawing attention. Something else was shifting. Something bigger. Something dangerous. The atmosphere inside the charity reception grew heavier as the evening progressed. Conversations blurred into soft noise. But Nora remained painfully aware of Adrian Locke's eyes following her across the room. Each time she glanced his way, he shifted his attention. Pretending to focus on a drink or a distant conversation, Cassian noticed it too. When the crowd thinned near the display of auction items, Cassian leaned close enough that only she could hear him. He's waiting for something. Do not react. Just stay beside me. Nora nodded, but her stomach tightened. She had known the contract would draw scrutiny, but she had not expected this level of cold calculation from someone inside Cassian's own company. Moments later, Adrian Locke approached them. His smile was polite, but it lacked warmth. Mr. Ward and Mrs. Ward, congratulations on your surprising union. Cassian's posture shifted subtly, protective yet controlled. Adrian's gaze slid toward Nora. I must say, the board was not expecting you to marry so suddenly, especially someone outside our usual circles. Nora kept her shoulders steady. Life rarely follows anyone's expectations. Adrian studied her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. Very true. Although sudden marriages often come with interesting stories, Cassian stepped forward slightly. If you have a point, make it. Adrian's eyes gleamed. The board simply wants transparency. I am sure you understand. New marriages, new alliances, new vulnerabilities. Nora felt Cassian tense beside her. Adrian continued, his tone deceptively calm. Rumors travel quickly. People talk. A waitress becomes a wife. A billionaire defends her fiercely. It raises questions. Nora met his gaze without flinching. People talk when they are afraid of losing power. For the first time, Adrian's expression faltered. Cassian glanced at Nora, a flicker of pride in his eyes. Adrian recovered quickly. Interesting perspective. I suppose we will see how long this arrangement lasts. Cassian's voice dropped a degree colder. Be careful, Adrian. The CFO smiled again, but it was sharper now. Of course, enjoy your evening. When he walked away, Cassian exhaled slowly, jaw tight. He is planning something. He has wanted control for years. This marriage threatens his leverage. Nora looked up at him. Because if you appear stable, the board cannot challenge you. Exactly. The music resumed softly around them, but Nora no longer felt the same warmth she had earlier. She felt the beginnings of a storm building beneath the polished veneer of the evening. Cassian turned toward her, voice lower, gentler. You handled him well. Nora managed a small breath. I did not expect him to confront us so openly. He wanted to see if we would break. Cassian lifted her hand carefully, anchoring her. You did not. For a moment, the chaos around them faded. The contract, the board, the CFO's threats. It all fell into the background as Cassian's thumb brushed lightly against her knuckles. Nora, we said quietly, I will not let him hurt you. Or this. Something unspoken hung between them, no longer contractual. No longer calculated. Something real. The ride back from the charity reception was silent, but not the comfortable silence they had shared before. This one pulsed with tension, heavy with the weight of Adrian Locke's warning. Nora kept her hands folded in her lap, replaying the CFO's words in her mind. She sensed danger creeping closer, threading itself into the edges of their arrangement. When they reached the mansion, Cassian walked her inside, his jaw clenched. The staff withdrew discreetly, sensing the shift in the air. Nora followed him into the living room where the city lights spilled through the tall windows. Sign finally spoke. He will try to use this marriage to undermine me. Nora took a slow breath. Because I am not from your world. Cassian turned toward her, frustration flickering in his eyes. Because he believes vulnerability is a weakness. He thinks that involving someone like you makes me easier to control. Nora absorbed that quietly. But he is wrong. Cassian's gaze softened, a rare moment of honesty breaking through. Yes, he is wrong. A beat of silence passed before he continued, voice lower now. Nora, there is something you need to know. The marriage was not only about the board, my mother's charitable. Trust has a clause that activates only if I am in a stable marriage. If the board takes control before that, they will redirect the funds. Everything she built would be erased. Nora's breath caught. So this was about protecting her legacy. Cassian nodded. Her work mattered to her more than anything. And I will not let them destroy it. Something shifted inside Nora. For the first time, she saw the full truth, not the cold calculations of a billionaire, but the grief of a son trying to honor the only person who had ever truly understood him. She stepped closer. Why did you not tell me sooner? Cassian looked at her with a quiet vulnerability that startled even him. Because I did not want you to think I was using you for a story of sympathy, and because it felt too personal. Nora felt her heart pull toward him. Thank you for trusting me. He held her gaze, the walls around him lowering inch by inch. There is more. Adrian has been pushing for control for months. If he exposes this marriage as an arrangement, he wins. Nora exhaled. Then we cannot let him. Cassian took a slow breath. This is bigger than a contract now. I need you to choose whether you want to stand in this with me. Not because of the agreement, but because it is right. Nora felt the weight of his words settle over her. She thought of the garden, the photograph of his mother, the unexpected warmth he had shown her, the way he steadied her during every moment of uncertainty. She stepped closer, steady and unafraid. I will stand with you, but only if we are honest from now on. No more hiding. Cassian searched her face. as if trying to understand how a woman he barely knew had become the only person he could rely on. He nodded slowly. Honesty. From both of us. Their hands brushed. Not planned. Not part of any arrangement. Just human. Just real. And for the first time, Nora felt that this marriage born in necessity was becoming something neither of them had been prepared for. The next morning, the mansion felt strangely still, as if the walls themselves sensed the weight of the decision Nora and Cassian had made. They had agreed to honesty, two standing together, to no longer hiding behind the safety of a contract, but the world had other plans. Marin rushed into Cassian's study with a tablet in her hands, her expression tight. "Mr. Ward, you need to see this." Cassian took the device, and Nora stood beside him as the screen revealed a headline already spreading across financial feeds. Insider claims Cassian Ward's marriage is a contractual arrangement, accompanying. The article was a blurry photo of Nora leaving the training room with Alina, the headline suggested. Secrecy? Manipulation? Deception? Cassian's jaw clenched. Adrian. Nora felt the shock ripple through her, but she steadied herself. "We knew he would try something." Cassian looked at her, the storm building behind his eyes. "If the board believes this, they can freeze the trust. Everything my mother built could be erased in a single vote."
Oh.
Nora placed her hand gently over his. "Then we tell the truth, not the contract. The truth we found after." He stared at her, searching her face. "Are you sure?" "Yes," she said. "I am not afraid anymore." Moments later, Cassian called an emergency press conference. The mansion's courtyard filled quickly with reporters. Lights, microphones, and murmurs pulling the air tighter. Nora stood beside him as he approached the podium. For the first time, he did not position her behind him or to the side. He placed her hand in his openly, letting the world see what Adrian believed he could break. Cassian spoke clearly, his voice steady. "There have been rumors about my marriage. Rumors meant to undermine the legacy my mother built. So let me be direct. When Nora Hale entered my life, I was a man drowning in expectation and responsibility. I believed I needed a structure to protect what mattered." Porters leaned forward, hungry for scandal. Cassian continued, his tone deepening. "But I was wrong. This marriage is no longer an arrangement, and it has not been for some time. Nora has stood with me, challenged me, and changed me. She is not a weakness. She is my choice." Nora felt her breath catch, emotion warming her eyes. He squeezed her hand once before adding, "Anyone who challenges my marriage challenges my family, my integrity, and the legacy my mother left behind." The courtyard erupted in questions. But Cassian stepped away from the podium, guiding Nora gently back inside. Once the doors closed behind them, silence wrapped around the hall. Nora turned to him. "You meant every word." Cassian met her gaze without hesitation. "I did." For a long moment, they simply stood there. Two people who had signed a contract, but discovered something far greater than obligation. Nora stepped closer, and Cassian lowered his forehead to hers, the walls between them finally falling away. "Nora," he whispered, "I choose you. No conditions." She smiled softly. "Then I choose you too." Outside, the world debated their story. Inside, the truth had already taken root. This marriage was no longer ink. It was real. It was theirs. And it was just beginning.